Hello and welcome. It's really great to have you guys here. I know we had a few last-minute cancellations, so I hope they really enjoy the playback of this. So we're here today for the All for One, One for All community, and I'm going to be talking today about leadership revolutionized. Now, this is not just for leaders. This is for anybody, because the content I'm going to cover today doesn't just include leadership of others, it also includes the leadership of yourself. So we need to be able to lead ourselves before we can start leading others. It's a really important growth phase in any human, basically in adults, if we haven't already been through this and we're not self-leaders, and we'll learn more about that in a minute. It's really, really important that we get to understand that and know what we can do about that. It's a very important phase, learning to lead ourselves. And we'll go through not just leading ourselves, but also managing ourselves. And then we'll talk about leading others and managing others. So I'm going to be looking at this from an entirely new perspective today. Any questions before we begin?
What it's all about. So keep going, Ross.
Awesome, fantastic. So this takes learnings from a few different places. It takes learnings from spiral dynamics, which I recreated for myself and I called the 8 levels of human potential. It takes learnings from one of my mentors from a long time ago about leadership as well. There's a lot of elements that have come together to create this. So I'm just going to do a basic model for you to help you understand these sections, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail. So starting off with, and I'm going to color code these as well, and the colors can be helpful. And if you ever want to refer to spiral dynamics, you'll notice that I've matched these colors up as well, so that'll be helpful. So the first place that we want to be at is what I call these days, I call it the initiator. Okay, the initiator, that's the first place. And this is where we start with self-leadership. So we start to lead ourselves at this point. Now, what does that mean when we lead ourselves? Well, let me contrast that for you about the stage that is not yet on this model. So there's something that happens before that. And as we grow, we go through this stage, and I call it the follower. Okay, the follower. And what the follower does is they have this kind of victim mentality where the world is bigger and stronger and more capable than they are. They don't have the power. Other things in the world have the power. And it's a really challenging place for us to be in. As a human, to be stuck in this stage is really challenging. We're looking for blame, we're looking for denial, we're looking for excuses. We're constantly looking for it to not be our fault. Rather than taking responsibility for it, we're going, hey, don't blame me, it's not my fault. You know, it was the weather, it was the blackout, it was the GFC, it was that person over there. It's anything but our own fault or responsibility. And the problem is that they look at the kind of this thing about blame. And I'm going to be using words like taking responsibility and ownership, and separating from that any sense of something being wrong or there being any blame is a really powerful way to do it. You know, my kids are at school learning about the growth mindset, and a growth mindset is really being okay to not, how do I put this, to be asking questions and to make mistakes. So making mistakes and learning and growing. So it's okay to make a mistake. Fantastic. Mistakes are really great because they're an opportunity to learn and grow. And being in a growth mindset for the rest of your life is a really great place to be. It'll always, always serve you. You know, when you go into something new or something you've done before, as soon as you get in there and you're doing this thing and it's unfamiliar and you're uncomfortable about it, that's all perfectly fine. It's exactly how it should be. And it's okay to not get it right, you know, to make mistakes, because they're not good, they're not bad, they're not wrong. They're learning opportunities.
Yeah, I think, Ross, the generations before us and even our generation really growing up were taught that mistakes weren't okay. So it's a totally different shift in the way that they are educating our kids these days.
Absolutely, yeah. So the moment we're born, we're told, you know, certainly for myself, my generation, the moment we're born, we were told, no, 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 don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. You know, you go to school and suddenly the teacher starts putting big red X's on everything, like, you know, cross, cross, cross. No, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. There's a big shift away from that in today's teachings. You're right. So we have the follower, and that's where there's a lot of, it's a very challenging place because they don't take responsibility yet. So they're not really part of this model, but I really need to highlight that so that we understand the difference. So what we've got, and I'm going to break it into 4 sections. Okay, so on these 4 sections, the first one here is the initiator. And the initiator is able to lead themselves. Okay, they can lead themselves, the initiator. And they do that primarily by taking responsibility, taking ownership, and accountability. So it's a big step from blaming people into this place where we take ownership for things. It's a really big step to be able to do that. Now, I'm just going to go to the next section as well. So this one here, ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And that's really what we're doing. We're taking ownership for what's happening. And this is where we start to take the actions and the responsibility for what's happening in our world. And there's no limit to that either. It really is taking the actions and responsibility for everything that's happening in our world. And it's a very powerful place to be as well. So if we're blaming something, let's assume that, but I'll go into more detail a little bit later. We won't do that right now. I'll keep moving for the moment just to get through the rest of this model so that you understand and have a bit more context. So once we're able to lead ourselves, we can then manage ourselves. And I call this one the steward. The reason I call that the steward is because they're in control. Sorry, I actually did rename that one. Here I am calling it the steward, and I'm using an old name. I called it the steward for a long time. I actually call it the controller now. It took a long time to come up with a name for this one. The reason is that this person here, the controller, they're able to manage themselves. So any word that I use to talk about somebody that can manage themselves really fell into that space of leadership and management. And eventually, I called it the steward for a while. It's now called the controller. So when you think about a controller, they usually control something rather than other people. So if you look at trains and you've got, oh, well, you know, he's the controller. He might sit up in his box and he controls all the lines and the tracks and things like that. So they're controlling things more than they are people. So a controller takes responsibility for their time management. Once they've figured out how to lead themselves and take the actions, then they can go to a point where they can start to manage those things. So they'll take the actions, they'll do the uncomfortable things. They now manage their time and they manage themselves. So this is the controller. So they're now in control. And a great example of who this person is, so actually I didn't give you an example of who the initiator would be. Initiator might be somebody who starts in an organization, they're really keen, they're asking questions, they're out there learning, they're okay to make mistakes, or someone who's come to a new role or something like that is a really good example. And they're really happy to go in there and give it a go. The controller here is a great example, is someone who's really good with their time. You've probably heard the saying, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. That busy person is this controller. Okay, that's who we're talking about here. Okay, they manage themselves, they manage their time. Everything around them is kind of a resource. They understand priorities and goals and all of those sort of things. So once they lead themselves, they can then eventually learn to manage themselves or ourselves. So once we've learned to do that, once we've learned to lead ourselves and manage ourselves, then we can start looking at leading others. So this is where the leader appears. And now we're talking about others. So the leader appears. So once we've learned how to lead ourselves, and we've learned how to control ourselves, or manage ourselves, I should say, then we've earned the right to lead others. And we start, there's that, once again, that old saying about, people say, oh, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, that's the contradiction. This person here, not only they do what they say do this, I'm doing it. It's not just good for you, it's good for everybody. I'm doing it, I'm the example. So this person here will be the example. Somebody who hasn't earned the right to lead is somebody who's not doing it themselves. Okay, they haven't been the initiator, they're not leading themselves to go do it, they're not managing themselves to make sure it gets done, yet they want to lead other people. Okay, so a leader needs to go through the other stages first to earn the right to lead others. So be the example. Okay, this person here is the example. And the last one here is the manager. This one is the manager. Now, there's not a big step from the leader to the manager, but it's important distinction that we become the leader before we become the manager. Because if we cannot lead anybody anywhere, we don't have the right to manage them. Because if you're if somebody does become a manager without having the leadership skill, they'll become likely a micromanager, where they'll really try and get heavily involved because they can't inspire the individual, they can't lead them to be responsible for themselves. So what we're really looking to do here is to lead others to become initiators and controllers of themselves and the leader. So once you're inspiring others and you're leading them and you're taking them on a journey somewhere, then you've earned the right to manage them.
Ross,
does that make sense so far?
Yeah, even though these are in a square shape now, is this something that is progression? Like it could be in a pyramid shape or a flowchart shape, or is it generally you progress from initiator to controller to leader to manager? Is that the steps usually?
Absolutely. So then I've got another layout of it. I'll just grab it. So absolutely, the layout here, it is one after the other. Now, if you've got more than one, you don't necessarily need to go back and learn the first one if you've already got it. But the reason it's in this shape, and you can see here I've done one that's very similar to what we're looking at now.
Right, yeah.
The reason I've laid it out like this is so that we really understand there's a difference between self, others, lead, and manage.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why I've laid it out like this, because that's the really important thing. We need to do self before we've earned the right to do others, and we need to lead before we can manage. That's both with self and with others.
Yeah.
That's why I've done it like this, so that's really clear that it's self and others, leading before managing. But otherwise, you are correct. It does go from the follower to the initiator, the controller, the leader, and the manager. And if you look at the spiral dynamics, it's purple, red, blue. I think the color they use for that is orange, and green. Now, it doesn't have to be green here, though. It can still be orange. Once you've figured out how to lead people, like you've been through this journey, it's very simple to go from a leader to a manager. That's a really simple step.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nice, Ross. Yeah. It's Luke here. I'm not on video, but I'm on audio. So
awesome. Welcome.
G'day to everybody. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really nice, clean way that you've laid it out. And I think if you're a budding entrepreneur, like as you said, some of these steps are, need to be done to move on to potentially the next sort of phase or step. will we? There's potential
Yes.
that we waver in and out of those as well. Like what advice would you have for someone that might feel that they're, getting into leadership, then to management, but also, can come back to controller and be that micromanager? Like what sort of advice would you give to entrepreneurs, based on your template there?
Yeah, really, really good question, because this is how this came about. I used to just use a version that had nothing to do with managing and leading and all the others. It was just it was a personal development version of this, where people grew through the different phases, and for example, this one here is linked very, very tightly to the warrior, which is somebody who's out there trying to make a change. Okay, but the downside of that is they're always trying to fight. So what I've done is I've created a much cleaner version of this that helps people focus on where they want to go. So less so than the challenges within it, we can help people focus on where they want to get to. So when you've got questions about, well, the underlying structure that's happening for an individual that happens, that's represented in this model, and they're going from different places, what we can do is we can look at what is it that we need to do at each of these steps or stages to get that result.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're having a bad day, okay, and everything's gone wrong, and you're just angry, and you're being that warrior, okay, so you're kind of bringing that warrior energy, and you're kind of arguing with everyone and fighting with everyone, and nothing's going well. And maybe you're micromanaging them. That could be happening as well. You're right. So you could be, operating a bit here as well. In that case, then we go a little bit deeper and we say, well, what does it take to lead, and what do I need to do to manage? What are those energies? So the leader here. So the three things, the three core things. So I'll talk about more about the examples in a minute. But the three core things for a leader are an example of excellence. So that's, as I said before, about doing it. So doing the do, not just telling other people to do it, but being prepared to do it. So an example of excellence. Putting the team before yourself. Okay, so not yourself before the team, put the team before you. It's an example of that. And also upholding the company values. So to be a leader, you need to uphold the company values, be an example, and to put the team before yourself. And that's when you're doing those things, you'll be operating as a leader. Whereas if you are in that space where you're arguing and things like that, you won't be doing that. You'll be putting yourself first. You'll be making other people wrong. You probably won't be upholding any values. You're not being an example. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Let me cover off quickly. So I said that for the initiator, we're looking at ownership, responsibility, and accountability. For the controller, we're looking at priorities. So that the controller will prioritize. They will achieve their KPIs. So they'll have goals and things like that, and they'll be achieving them. And also, as we get advanced in here, we start managing up. So rather than getting our manager to come to us and go, have you done that thing yet? Where are we at? Is the report finished? We've got a meeting in 20 minutes. You're actually managing up. And you're telling your manager that this is where we're at with the report. It's going to be ready at this time, or this is a hold up, this, whatever it is. Okay, so you're telling the manager doesn't need to come and manage you. You tell the manager what's happening. Does that make sense as well?
Yep.
Yeah, sure does.
Awesome. Excellent. So we spoke about the leader. The leader was examples of excellence, putting the team first and upholding the company values. And the last one here is the manager. So for the manager, we're looking at assisting others with their KPI. So we're not just doing our own, we're actually assisting others with their KPIs now. We're encouraging growth. Okay, so growth, not just for ourselves, not just for our team, but for the company. Okay, we're encouraging growth everywhere. And also, we've got strong reporting as well. So we're letting, whoever the stakeholders and things are need to know. So reporting starts here. We start managing up. So we start reporting here, and it gets stronger and stronger through to here. So the manager is, can manage a company by, basically based on reports and feeding out the information that way. having the leaders to lead the people, and the controllers managing all their time and the resources of being very effective, and people who are at least being an initiator to grab the bull by the horns and give it a go and start to learn. Because if we stay down here in the follower, if we stay down here as an employee, we're a real drain on resources and making it really hard for ourselves and for progress. You might go, hey, I'd like to manage one day, but as long as you're blaming others, you're never going to get anywhere close to that. So we need to take the initiation, we need to learn, we need to ask for feedback. There's a saying that is, feedback is the breakfast of champions. I love that saying. So feedback is a breakfast of champions. I tell it to my kids all the time. I don't think they're big fans of it yet, but we're working on that. So getting feedback. So feedback isn't good, it isn't bad, it isn't wrong, it isn't right. It's a learning opportunity. Now, some of the feedback you're going to get in your life is feedback that's useless to you. You know, some people are going to not know what they're talking about, and they're going to give you advice, and it's advice that you want to let go. It's not the right advice for you. However, there's people that are going to give you advice that is going to be really useful. Excuse me. So, and when they give you the advice that's really useful, that's what you want to take on. And you want to take it on without any judgment or anything, except for an opportunity to learn and to grow. So it's really important here. This is the growth mindset, which is why the manager needs to bring growth. Okay, once you're a leader, you're already encouraging it. Okay, and as you're a manager, it's critical. So we're looking for that. Everybody who's not here as the controller or above needs to be getting into this really quickly to move to here. And the way to get to here is to look for feedback. Hey, yeah. So if you're down here and you're going, oh, it's so not fair, it's unfair. So look for feedback. Okay, forget that. Look for feedback. Don't take it as right, take it as wrong. Take it as an opportunity to become better. And then constantly having that growth mindset will serve you for the rest of your life, no matter what you're doing, moving your way through. Any questions at this point?
No, it's all making sense.
Awesome. So I want to go into a little bit more detail. So we can I want to give you examples of the type of things that people will be doing at these levels. So not just saying, ownership, responsibility, and accountability, but actual actions and things that they will do. So for the follower, just so that to help you recognize someone who is in this space, because you want to move them out really quickly. You want to get them into as an initiator as fast as you can. Okay, so justification, finger pointing, blame, denial. They won't be contributing either, so that's a good way to notice them. They lack contribution, so they don't put themselves out there. They don't get outside their comfort zone and put their hand up and say, hey, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
They'll also often be hiding or absent. So I'm wondering if there's something going on for the people that didn't make it here today. Now, the initiator, okay, that's our ownership, responsibility, and accountability. The initiator, ownership, responsibility, and accountability. And examples of that, they'll be seeking feedback, they'll be learning from their mistakes, they'll be communicating their needs. Okay, so communicating their needs and learning from their mistakes and seeking feedback are really great. They will be contributing ideas. So whether the ideas are accepted, whether they're great ideas or not, they will be contributing because they're okay to be outside their comfort zone and get it wrong and to learn. Okay, contribution is really important. Yep. And we need to learn how to be able to contribute powerfully. So just contributing to start with and allow the people around you to help teach you. They will know the company values. Okay, they're taking responsibility for these things. So they'll know the company values and they'll be operating as a team player. Now, one thing that is probably missing for someone who's not yet here, they're down here, they probably don't yet know that they're good enough. They probably don't yet know that they're lovable or that they fit in. Okay, people like to fit in, they like to know they're lovable. These are some of the core universal fears that drive human beings. So on this planet, there's a lot of people down here.
Yeah.
Now, here in Australia, we're predominantly follower and controller. Like they're the two predominant ones within Australia. There's bits of everything, but those two are the majority. So that means we have a lot of people here that want to fit in. They want to know that they're good enough, but don't just naturally know it. Now, everybody on the planet's good enough. And and everybody's lovable, and we don't actually need to fit in anywhere. We, as humans, we often have a need to fit in, but we don't. We only need our own acceptance. Okay, and as we start to grow as a human and we actually travel through this, we get that we are enough. Okay, so that's the initiator and the controller. So examples of the controller, they have clear goals and targets. So once again, they're prioritizing, they're achieving KPIs, and they're managing up. So they have clear goals and targets. They manage their KPIs. They seek to improve them as well. They don't just do their KPIs, they seek to get better at it. They suggest new ideas. They support others. So they're not just being a team player, they're supporting others. They demonstrate the company values, and they handle their disruptions. Disruptions are part of life. The phone rings. Yes, it does. Another email comes in. Yes, it does. Okay, and they handle those distractions. So the stretch there, I guess, for the initiator, the stretch on that one was becoming a team player. So on the natural original red, which was very warrior-like, that kind of lacked that team player. So we want to stretch people and help them move towards, yes, you do need to do that, but you need to be a team player as well. Otherwise, they can be very disruptive in your organisation. It's a very important step. And the other one, for this one here, for the controller, they like to manage themselves. And sometimes they're like, oh, I'm too busy. I can get all this done myself, but I'm not supporting others. So once again, making sure we're doing that team player as well. It is a bit better here, but just making sure that it's a clear responsibility for people within a team, that they're in a team. They're not just an individual. Okay, so for the leader, so once again, the leader is examples of excellence, putting the team before yourself and upholding your company values. So examples of this are developing your management skills. Okay, these are your own management skills. You're taking responsibility for it and you're developing them. You're supporting others. You're encouraging growth. You're leading by example. You're listening and collaborating. You acknowledge others and you drive culture. Okay, you're leading. And the manager, once again, the 3 focus points, we're assisting others' KPIs, encouraging growth and strong reporting. Examples of this is they respond quickly. They seek improvements. They report up and they report down. Mm-hmm. They have accurate and quick reports. They train and grow others. They improve all the KPIs, not just their own, not just others. They improve all of them within the whole organisation. So they're responsible for all the KPIs. And they drive change.
Great.
Questions?
Ooh. Luke, you got any?
Yeah, well, yeah, I do. I've got lots of questions. Well, I suppose what's going to make the most sense. And I suppose from my perspective, I've ran a small and a large team, or largish team, and I agree with there's definitely different stages, Ross, and I think for anyone that scales up in a business too, that some of the points that you make are very much awareness. So they're just points on, like, you're aware that if somebody is not meeting KPIs or they're not, responding or contributing at work, that they're definitely flags as well. Your model is a great way to be looking out for others in your team, not only from a performance perspective, but just a connection and just a general, hey, checking in. But it also gives people, as you said, that want to aim for things and set goals and get better and improve. It gives them something to pin the board on, or to pin on the board, so to speak. So, yeah, like really, and it really works. Like, you can see how it works from even just a startup through to, larger business, right through to reporting. Yeah. And sometimes you think, hey, it's not a big thing. It'll just work itself out. But, at some point, you can't be doing everything, even though we think we can, but we can't. And I think, so it's a really good model in a basic form, and that's how it needs to be. Business needs to be kept simple, man, because it's super complicated. Well, we kind of think it is, but broken down like this, it gives it a bit more clarity. And very universal for many different people in different, you know, phases of their journey. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've been looking at this and thinking about my journey with dealing with outsourcing people and contractors and things like that. But also I've just been comparing the model even to my BNI group. So looking at the leaders and the different types of people that are in the BNI group. So, you know, it's not we're not a company or anything like that, but we're still this group of people, and we have different roles. There's different leadership roles and everything like that. So I think it's a really interesting way to identify people in the group for sure.
Yeah, you'll see this everywhere you go. Like this is a human. So when I developed a version of this that was a lot more similar to the spiral dynamics. So this has been a work in development for about 10 years, and what I've discovered is that people, no matter where they are in life, they're somewhere on here. So it doesn't matter if they're in business or not, if they're an employee or not, whether they're in, you know, they're working at McDonald's, whether they're at school, whether they're retired, it doesn't matter. They are still somewhere on here in the way that they think. Okay, so there's a very clear thinking that happens at each of these levels. And something you mentioned before, Luke, about knowing where people are at. So, and it's really helpful. Hey, you want to be a leader or a manager? That's great. Let's look at what you need to do to get there. So let's be really clear about where you are right now and what you need to do to get to where you want to get to. So we need to make sure that you're leading yourself first, then managing yourself, then you can learn to lead others, and then you can learn to manage others. And I'm quite happy to help you get to that place, but that is the journey that we need to go on. So no matter where you are, you still need to make sure you've got all of those. So what's I didn't mention, but is also built into this, is that if somebody's not achieving something, you know that they need to go back and do this. So if they started working their way through this and they've got to a leadership role, but then you're like, oh, hang on a minute, this person's not getting their work done. Okay, then if they're not getting their work done, then they're actually probably still needs some work here. Okay, or certainly here. Okay, and we're trying to lead others, but hang on, we're missing some of the building blocks along the way. So that's what's really important, is understanding, well, if we're not doing all the things that I listed before at all the ones before where we're at, so it's not just the one we're at. We don't just do what the manager does. We need to do what the initiator, the controller, the leader, and the manager does to be a manager. So if we want to be a controller, we need to be an initiator and a controller. Yeah. So the one before it has to be done as well. We can't skip any of this, because if we're not an initiator and a controller, we can't possibly be a leader.
Right.
Because if we're not leading ourselves, we're not being the example. Then we can't be the leader, because we're not doing what we need to do. So we can't be an example.
Yeah. Well said. I think that resonates. What you just said then resonates to me right now in my point, you know, in life and journey. So yeah, 100%. Cool. Very well said, Ross. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent.
Fabulous.
Are there any other questions?
I guess just maybe how, just like maybe a solopreneur would treat this, you know, like someone that's just on their own. Are they identifying what stage they're at themselves, how they can get themselves to other levels, or what, you know, what would you suggest for someone that's just working on their own?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of people go out to business. They, you know, there's like Australia, I don't know if all countries are the same, but certainly Australia, we have a massive number of people that start their own businesses. Like it's huge. But the statistics, unfortunately, say that you know, 50% of them go out of business every 2 years. So even a small business that's been around for 10 years has a 50% chance of being out of business within the next 2 years, which is a staggering statistic. They say that it's probably a little bit higher than 50% in the first few years, but nonetheless, it's roughly about, say, 50% for the entirety of that small business life. So even 20 years, there's still a 50% chance they'll be gone in 2 years. That means that where you are on this is actually going to be a major determinant of whether or not you're going to be successful in business. And that's actually where this started, because I've been in small business myself for basically since I left school. I've been self-employed ever since. So, and then I started coaching people, and as I started coaching them, I discovered that this was playing out. I used to use it as a marketing tool because there's a lot more behind this that tells you the colors and the language and those sort of things as well. So I use it as a marketing tool, and then I discovered there's a lot more to it than this. And, over the next, 10 years or something, this became what it is today.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, if somebody is not at the barest minimum an initiator, like they're giving it a go, they're outside their comfort zone, they're eager, they're learning, they're making mistakes, they're getting feedback. Feedback, if you do a marketing campaign as a small business owner and it flops, it fails, okay, it's cost you money and time and it didn't work. Instead of going, I'm not going to do that again, you need to go, why did that not work? Okay, what about what I didn't work, and let me figure it out.
Yeah.
Because if somebody is making money in the space that you're making money in, doing what you're doing, and their marketing's in the same space, it's not that the marketing doesn't work, it's that something about what you did with that marketing didn't work. Okay, if there's an example of it in the world, which, there's examples of all sorts of things out there. If you're doing what somebody else is and you're not getting the results, don't step away. Don't blame anything. Okay, don't say, so many small businesses went under and they blamed the GFC. The moment they do that, the GFC takes away their power.
Yeah.
Because at the same time the GFC was going on, some businesses were making record profits.
Yeah.
But the moment we blame something, we give that thing our power. It doesn't matter what it is that we blame. So an example would be somebody turns up late to work. They probably do it regularly. If it's one-off, it probably never gets mentioned, but they probably do it regularly. Okay, they're turning up late, and then you go to them and say, hey, look, you're 10 minutes late. What happened? They go, oh, yeah, look, it was raining, and the traffic was terrible. Okay, what point did you know it was raining? Do you think maybe you could have left earlier? Okay, so they're not taking responsibility for it. They're blaming the rain.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're giving their power to the rain. What they're saying is the rain is more powerful than me. I'm not capable of being here on time because it rained. Rain's not a new thing. We can just leave earlier. Or there's literally infinite possibilities. So what they're doing is they're giving their power away. So at the moment you blame something, you give your power to that thing, no matter how inanimate that thing may be. Or if it's a person, or it really doesn't matter, you just give that thing your power. But instead, if you take back your power and you say, okay, that didn't work, I'm going to take responsibility, ownership and accountability for it. I'm going to make it different. Okay, it didn't work that time. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to do it again. So no matter where you're sitting, you need to at least be here. Okay, at here you can be successful as an entrepreneur. And it's your ability to take responsibility and learn quickly that's really important. So if you're starting your own business, don't put, blame on anything. Take full responsibility for everything and know what it is that you want. Know what your goals are. So taking some pieces from here, know what your goals are and the measurements and your KPIs and what is it that I'm trying to achieve, and then take full responsibility for making them happen. Don't blame something when it doesn't go right. Take responsibility. Okay, that didn't work. What now? That didn't work. What now? And never give up, because you need to get over. You need to learn what you need to learn. Now, I don't know how much it is. Okay, so many people quit when they're really close. Okay, but if you're pushing hard, you're pushing hard. And don't look for, when you're starting a business, don't look for work-life balance. Look for work. Be unbalanced in it, because it will pay off in the end. Okay, so just look to know what your KPIs are and give it everything you've got till you get there. Then once you've got there and your business is starting to be successful, then you can potentially move into things like leadership and management and everything else.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I think we need to be clear, Ross, that this process as well can be well over 5, 10, 15, 20-year process. You know what I mean? Like it can take a long time to get from one to the other. I know that
Absolutely.
firsthand. So, and back to Jerry's question about what should someone solo be looking at? Well, just awareness of where they're at. The chart is definitely a good good way to see where you're at, and obviously where you want to get to, or it'll help guide you. But especially when you take on your first employee, you're going to have to get to a point where you are a leader, and if someone does come in late, do you write them the rule book? Do you be a little bit gentler on them? Do you dig a bit deeper? So all these little things will will come up for you in the journey, and that could be quick for people. It could be 3 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. But I think the end result, will really work in your favour if you can get past a few of those hard steps first.
Yeah, I thought it was really
Absolutely.
interesting, Ross, about letting other people have the power. I was listening to a podcast today. It was a B&I podcast, and it was about a woman saying to the boss of B&I, she left her B&I group because one guy was a jerk. And so he made a podcast about that, because he said that she hasn't won, the rest of the group hasn't won, he's won. You've given all the power to him now. And, what the group should have done is come together and address the situation and address the jerk in the room, rather than one person feeling like that they have to leave because of one person. But it didn't actually solve anything at all. So, the same.
That's a really good example. Yeah. Yeah, someone being that follower and having a reason, or a blaming, I left because of something else. That other thing was more powerful and capable than I was. And you're right, nobody in that B&I group as well. And that's a really good example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So what you were saying there, Luke, with those kind of stages and going through and being really clear, and it can take a long time. Absolutely, it can take a long time. And that's why this one's really important, because that sets up your growth mindset to start with. So that's going to serve you. So if no matter which one of these you go to, you still need to have this growth mindset where you're learning, you're seeking feedback. You're finding the people that are at the level that you want to be at, and you're learning from them. That's critically important. There's no, hey, look, I've made it. Because even once you've got to this as a manager, hopefully you make enough money that you want to retire and maybe do something else. You go, hey, look, I've made more money than I know what to do with. What am I going to do with my life now? And there's, and there's other things that occur after this. But from a business perspective, most of us will be in here, okay, and dealing with this. And we need to make sure this is really strong, regardless of the level we're aiming for. We need to make sure we're taking responsibility, accountability, and ownership. We're being the example always, and looking and doing all those things. Hey, that didn't work. That's fine. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to have another go. Yeah. So when you start moving into leadership, that might be a whole journey that takes you through all sorts of spaces in your life as you learn to become an amazing leader. And once you've got the leadership, if you've been the initiator, the controller, and the leader, that doesn't mean don't give leadership a go. Absolutely give it a go. Always be out there leading and learning and giving things a go. But once you've got here and you've mastered all the others, the step to the manager becomes a reasonably easy one to do. It's the early ones that have a lot more work in them, because once you can lead yourself and you get to a point where you're looking to lead others, you've already figured out that leadership thing. What inspires people? So you know what it is for yourself. So it becomes a much easier step to find out what it is for others.
Yeah, nice. So where can we find out more information about this, Ross, too? So, outside of, obviously in the group, but, how can we find out more about this?
That's a good question. This model as it is today, you'll only get this one through me. There's kind of other things around this that, as I said, so we're looking at spiral dynamics and things like that. That levels of human potential, I've been using that for quite some years. This business model version of it. It's really easy to take into businesses. Come see myself. You know, if you go to rosspepper.com, you'll be able to find me and access me that way. Otherwise, part of this group, like hang out here. Like this is what I bring anywhere and everywhere I am. So wherever I'm going to be, you can be pretty sure there'll be some reference to this involved. So if you've got any questions, you can reach out. So if you're part of this group, make sure you get engaged with this group, and you can find out more here. If you want to get to me directly, then jump to my website.
Fabulous. We've probably got to wrap it up now, Ross. We're
absolutely
running,
cool. So
running out of
that's what I'm
Zoom
saying.
time.
Any more questions? But yeah, if your questions are all done for now,
all done. No, thank you very much, Ross. Very insightful.
Thank you. Another great presentation for the All for One for All community, and we're building up all this library of knowledge to bring to whoever you guys are that will eventually watch this. So we hope that you got something out of tonight. And as always, if you've got comments, just leave them below, and questions as well.
Absolutely. If there's more questions off the back of this, and you've just literally just watching this, wherever this is, there's probably a spot to comment. So please do that so that we can respond to you and get you whatever answers you need. Yeah. Awesome. And welcome to our community too.
Yes, welcome. Thank you, Ross. And we look forward to another presentation from you in the near future. Thanks for joining us tonight. See you later.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
See ya.
Bye.